Terry. So the topic for this morning is escalating behavior. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you kind of an overview of what we call the cycle of acting out behavior. And then we're going to use that to say we know where kids are in that cycle based upon these things. What kind of things should we do for each of those pieces in that cycle? So we're going to start by finding my clicker. There we go. So this is the stuff I'm going to talk about is based on a book that a friend of mine, Jeff Colvin, and I wrote a few years ago. Jeff is the originator of the cycle idea, the logic of that, and then we wrote together the what should teachers do part of this. So I just wanted to give credit where credit is due. So these are Jeff's phases of escalation. We start with calm, like we all are right now. Calm is the only stage where instruction works. We want to teach how to deal with all of the other phases during the calm. Once they are not calm, they're not listening to instruction. So we've got to get it all done then. Something stops the calm at some point for some kids. Sometimes you'll know exactly what that trigger was. Other times you'll have no idea. But if the trigger doesn't get stopped, it turns into a phase we call agitation. And we'll talk about what happens in each of these phases. But agitation, if it doesn't get stopped, turns into acceleration, and there's no stopping it at this point. It's going to go until it peaks. For some kids, that peak is way up there, and for some, not as far up. For some, it becomes violent outbursts, and for others, it becomes completely inward. But there'll be a peak, there'll be a period of time where they are de-escalating, and then there'll be a recovery phase before they're back to the calm. So when we talk to them about prevention, we do all the talk in the calm. When you want to talk to them about here are the consequences you earned for the behaviors you just had, we don't want to do that anywhere on this set of phases except for the calm. If we use it anywhere else, it's going to make it worse. So let's go through each of these phases. We'll start with calm. This was our favorite. When they're calm, they can follow directions, they can stay on task, they can receive correction, and they can set goals for what they're going to do in the future. We like it when all of these things are there. So when kids are in the calm, take advantage. That's your teachable moment. Provide instruction. Teach them, what would you do if? Think ahead. What are the things that are going to trigger them? What are the things that bother them? And teach them specifically how to handle those. More generically, we can talk about conflict resolution and controlling your emotions, anger control, those kinds of things. But all of that is instruction, and it happens at this phase. Then something happens. Trigger. It could be a consequence is coming, and I know it's coming for something I did wrong, and that has me triggered. With kids, a lot of times it's, that kid disrespected me. I'm used to hear with my kids, he's looking at me. Like, seriously? He's looking at you? But that kid was looking at him because he knew looking at him would bother him, and that bothered him that he was doing it, knowing that it would bother him, and that was a trigger. You don't know a lot of times when kids are triggered. I can tell something's wrong, but I don't have any idea why. Here's how you know there's a trigger. There's a trigger because the kids can't quite maintain concentration. So you're talking to them, and they're looking at you, and they may even be nodding, but they aren't listening. And you can tell they're kind of out of it, like something's bothering them, and they'll will shift and fidget and stare at things. And if you say, hey, are you with me? Huh? Yeah. But they're not. When we see that a kid is potentially triggered and starts having these kind of behaviors, what we want to do is, and this would be our big idea whenever we talk about trigger, we want to distract. So I want you to think about it in terms of a train just started rolling down the tracks in their brain. It's going nowhere good. I want to derail it. So what I want them doing is thinking about something other than this trigger. The longer they think about that trigger, the faster that train is going to go. And the more that train gets going, the harder it is to stop. So here would be a really simple example of a distraction. I notice that you're looking really distracted right now, and you're just like you can't quite, and I say, hey, come here, can I get you to help me move these books? And I just want you to be thinking and doing something different. It's distracting you from what you're thinking about. So again, all of this usually starts with perseveration. Running this over and over and over in my head. And the longer that rolls in my head, the more frustrated or angry I'm going to get. So I'm trying to take it off the tracks. Find ways to reinforce kids for positive things. Set them up to do things where you can say, good job. Set them up for things that they are good at so we can get them going again. If you know that this trigger is in relation to something we've talked about before, it's okay to give a reminder there. So remember, we've talked about this. Looks like maybe you're thinking about this. What are some of those strategies? And say, have you tried? Have you tried? Hit them early with reminders. Again, this is not the time to teach them those strategies, but it's a good time to remind them of those strategies. But if your distractions don't work, that train is now rolling, and we're into the agitation. Agitation is like trigger on steroids. So instead of me just not being able to really pay attention, I'm going to be doing this. I am tight-fisted, clenched. If it's a kid that I think disrespected me, I'm going to be giving them an evil glare as hard as I can. They aren't listening to anything you say. And in fact, you'll notice if you ask a kid while they get into this agitation, hey, do you know? I know! Go away! It's just, we are going so fast right now that I can't do anything else. And so our procedures move from distraction to redirection. Instead of me saying, hey, did you see that on TV last night? Or, hey, what were you guys doing when you're out? Instead of just distracting, I now need to give you a direction. Would you please take that computer and sit right there? I'm going to give you this, and I need you to do this. A direct direction. And it's meant to make you jog that train off the tracks. But the further you go up this hill, the harder that train is to get off the tracks. So what we're doing here is we're thinking about, where could they sit? Could I move somebody else in the room out of their eyesight? But I'm also thinking about direction. Again, if you've taught this already, then you can say, you need to go through the 10 steps. Here they are. Go through and think about them. We've already talked about this. So again, I've already taught it to you, but I'm giving you a prompt to go back through them. But the further we go, the less likely it is they're going to do it. But this is our last chance. If we can't get this to get broken, break that chain, it's going to go up, because the next phase is acceleration. When we hit there, it's going. When we hit acceleration, things go up quickly. So from just simply not listening to you and maybe saying, I know, go away, the next thing it's going to be is the big things. This is where you'll get absolutely refuse to speak to you or move. That one is the internalizing version. Most of the time, that's not what it is. The externalizing version is throwing things, cursing loudly, threatening people, screaming at people, all of those things. And so, in my 5 years that I worked in residential treatment for adjudicated adolescent boys, I've seen chairs and desks fly through the air. I've seen them swing golf clubs and bats at people, and all of those happen after they began the acceleration. It was a series of smaller things that just go. Now, I will say, I've seen kids that can simmer in trigger and agitation for an hour. And I've seen other kids that trigger to peak happens in 10 seconds. So it's oftentimes hard to get in early enough. But this is why we're trying to look for these signs and do the things we can do as quickly as possible, because you never know how quickly this thing will flare up. Our entire strategy changes once they hit this phase. We went from teaching at calm to distracting at trigger to redirection when they got to agitation, and now safety. Once they take off, we're not worried about trying to get the train off the track. The train's on the track, we're not getting it off. What we're trying to do is keep everything safe. We're worried about this kid, and we're worried about all the other kids, and we're worried about ourselves, possibly even property. But our strategy now becomes, how do we detach from the student but maintain a safety around him or her? So, once you fire up, I do not want to be over here saying, calm down, calm down, calm down, because that'll make it worse. Instead, detach. But say, hey, why don't you guys come with me and we'll be over here, and if there are sharp objects on the table, I might grab them as I walk by, and I'm just keeping things as clear as I can around this student. I am going to come back and say some things, but what I'm going to say is, I know you're really angry. What you need to do now is just have a seat, and then I walk away. You do not want to say, why don't you and I have a long conversation? They don't want to have a long conversation. That is not going to work. You just make your statement about what you want, and you go back to keeping people safe. It's a hit and run. Other kinds of things I think about when I'm doing this is, I don't make direct eye contact with kids. I kind of stand to the side. I talk in a tired, somber voice, so it might look like this. Yeah, I think you know what the steps are that you need to take. You just got to get yourself settled down, have a seat. We can get by this. And then I move. Don't stay there and hover. Hovering is a challenge that kids will take and escalate. Any threats you make to the kids, you're going to get suspension for this, will make them go higher. No threats. We only concern once they go up is, how do we not have them go up further than we want? It's eventually going to reach a peak, and different kids have different peaks. I've worked with kids whose peak happened fast and wasn't very big, and I've worked with kids whose peaks were extremely dangerous. But typically, what I've found with kids in schools is when they escalate and hit their peak, they actually do something that even surprises themselves. Like they'll say something, I hate you, to the teacher, and then it's kind of like it realizes, uh-oh. And typically when they hit that peak, it then comes down fairly sharply. So after peak, again, we're just concerned with safety. After peak, there's going to be some confusion, some blame projection, and what they're going to end up with doing is telling you that wasn't their fault. No, I know. That would have never happened if he wouldn't have said that. Or kids saying to the teacher, this is your fault because you gave me that grade. And don't argue. We don't care. We don't care. That's not at issue right now. Later, we can have that conversation. You're volatile and emotional right now, and we just say, okay, but why don't you just have a seat, get yourself calm? So all we're doing is saying we won't listen. They're going to possibly attempt to reconcile. Okay, I'm sorry. Don't bite on that either. No, I know, it's fine. Have a seat. We will have a conversation when you're back at the calm phase. Anywhere else, these conversations are not going to work very well. The problem here at de-escalation is anything you do that isn't really calming is going to create a second acceleration and a second peak. And you can get multiple peaks. So this is, I think, where we make the most mistakes as teachers is they're coming down and we decide it's time to tell them all the consequences they've earned. And here they go again. I always want people to say, but they need to know. You have the rest of your life to tell them they've done this wrong. For the next 10 minutes, it's okay that they don't hear that. Let them come all the way back down. So I'll ask a kid to go sit somewhere. I don't talk about consequences. I don't say you need to get back to work. We'll debrief and talk about this later during the calm phase. I'm just trying to make sure everything stays calm so you can come back down. Recovery is a tricky phase because we don't necessarily know when they're there. So you tell them to go sit, and they sit in this chair, and you can tell they're still angry. And that anger will become sullen, usually really exhaustion looking. Having a tantrum takes a lot out of you. So that comes down. And so I'm trying to think, when is it time to get them back to doing what we're doing? And so I will try little tricks. I'll say things like, I might just walk by here and say, thank you so much for getting yourself calm. Really impressed about how well you've done. Tell you what, I need to use this chair. Is it okay if you sit in that chair? And if the kids, they go like this, then you know it's good. We can move. But I've done this. Could you sit in that chair? Why? Just walk away. Not time yet. That's what I'm thinking in my head. Nope. We're not ready. And I might ask again for something. And when they finally comply with that, then I'm thinking, we have now entered recovery. At recovery, we still are not doing all of the teaching parts and all of the consequences. It's a matter of getting them back to where the rest of the class is. So I will do things like this. Hey, thank you so much for getting yourself together. I'm impressed by how you got yourself calm. I'll tell you what. All of us are working on problems 1 through 20. Why don't you just get out a paper and put your name on it? That's all you need to do. Okay, thanks again. Okay, so that's pretty easy. Just got to put a name on a paper. I wander, but we're not done. But we're doing the hit and run. Boom, back and forth. Come back by. You got it out and got your name on it. Thank you so much. We're really glad you're back with us. Again, real impressed at how you got yourself together. Tell you what, we're all doing 1 through 20. Why don't you just do problem 1? And I'm going to move again. And I'm just going to keep coming back. She's not going to get up to 20 by the time this period is over. She's going to have to make that up. When the period's done and she's calm and we can have a conversation and I can lead her back through. So what really happened that made you mad? Okay, so and we talked about things like that. So it looks like when that happened, it really triggered you and you didn't use your strategies. So what kind of things could you do better next time? Okay, and we can talk through this whole thing, get all of that out of the way, and then, and as you know, because of that behavior, you earned these consequences. I'm really sorry that you earned those. I want to think you and I together how I might signal you better about the things to do that would help you not earn those consequences. Notice she's getting the consequences, but I did not give them to her. She earned them. And I'm sorry. And my job is to help you not earn them again. But I'm not going to take responsibility for anything that happens to you in this. That was on you. My job as the teacher is to help you do it better next time. But if she called me, and think of the worst thing someone could call you, that I'm an adult. That was a name. I'm over that. I've had kids literally threaten to kill me, my family, my dog, and if I go, you better shut up about my dog, I'm going to hear nothing but dog things from every kid from now on. You cannot let them see you sweat on these things. Whatever you called me, whatever you said about me or my family, it's over. There's a consequence. You'll deal with it. I'm the teacher. I'm still on your side. We're moving forward. And I think for a lot of adults, that's really hard. And I just want to say, these are kids. They say things. You can't take these things personally, or you probably shouldn't be a teacher, because it's going to happen. I used to say, I think you should have to sign something before you go in to work in a school that says, I realize that some kid is going to say something really horrible to me, and I'll get over it because I'm an adult. But not everybody does get over those things. So after recovery's fully involved, I was just back in the calm phase again. We were talking about instruction and setting goals for the future and all of those things. So what I want to do now is I'm going to stay in the calm for a while and talk about strategies we can use when kids are in the calm phase. And I always want to use this logic. I don't have a magic wand that can say, if a kid is starting to escalate, you do this and it'll work every time. If I did, I would be really rich. Instead, what we've got are, when we've dealt with enough escalating kids, we know that these are good ideas, things that are likely to work. And these are things that are likely to not make it work. But there may be an oddball kid out there where it's just the opposite. I don't know. But when you don't know, you go with your best chance first. And so I'm going to talk about high probability, things that are more likely to work. So let's just look at reaction strategies here for a minute. First, if you really want kids to take responsibility for their own behavior, you need to teach them what the consequence is before it happens. If I don't teach the consequence, I'm the bad guy. So I come over here and I say, hey, you don't have your book. No recess for you today. She's like, that jerk just took my recess away. Because I didn't teach it ahead of time. But if I teach ahead of time, hey guys, remember, got to have the books. I'd hate for anybody to not bring a book, because then you wouldn't be able to go to recess, because I'd have to give you one of the books that somebody else had during the recess. So you've got to bring your books. So please remember, I'm going to remind you, because I'd hate to see anybody miss recess. Now, I come in and you haven't brought your book. Hey, oh man, you don't have your book. Now you're not going to get recess, darn it. How can I help you remember? I hate the fact that you're going to miss that recess. She's missing recess the same as she was in the first one. It's just that I'm making her take responsibility for it, not me. But the only way that really works is if I've taught it ahead of time. So I can say, as you know, this is the consequence, and I'll always put it on, I'm so sorry you made that choice. I'm so sorry that you weren't thinking about that. I'm so sorry that, because then it gives me the easy way to say, how can I help you with that? Would it help if I gave you a different kind of reminder? Would it help if I put something on your desk? Would it help? And so anything we do next is something that we've agreed is me helping you rather than me doing something to you. So as we start out, when you have kids that have behaviors that are larger and you know we're going to have larger consequences or whatever those things may be, tell the kids. So notice I didn't say, you'll miss recess because that's your punishment. I have a reason. You'll miss recess because I've got to find a time to use the book with you at a different time. And so you want to make sure that those consequences seem logical. It's not just, I'm going to make sure you feel pain for a while. Those won't work. It has to be, you don't like this, but you understand why it's necessary right now. And it can even be, sometimes the things you do are a safety concern. And so we're going to have you here for a little bit to make sure that you can Think about these things because we want to make sure everybody's safe. Instead of saying, so now you have to be in the dungeon for the next 3 days. There's a logical reason for what we're doing. But we teach those things ahead of time. Here's what's coming. Here's why. The next thing I think we need to think about when we do this is a set of particular ways to think about particular behaviors. So here's where we'll start with that. We went in and we surveyed, we did little focus groups with a bunch of teachers. And we asked them, what are the behaviors that bother you the most when you're teaching? And they came up with 5 escalating behaviors that we're going to go through one at a time. Disruptive behaviors, things that just make it so that we can't teach and can't get anything done. Non-compliant behaviors, kids not doing what we ask them to do. Provocative behaviors, kids that say outrageous things just to shock everybody. Disrespectful behavior, things that they say that are meant just to be a put down to teachers or others. And verbal aggression. Actually, I don't think we're doing verbal aggression today, we're doing the other 4. So, if you ask them what bothers you the most, they'll say disrespect. If you ask them what happens the most, they'll say noncompliance. We'll start with disruption. So here's what we're going to do. These are all made up videos, so I wrote these as scripts. They're all based on kids that I still have nightmares about from my years teaching. But situations, like this kid would do this all the time. And so I think that's an escalation, and so I'm going to use that. And so I wrote these scripts, and here's the way these all are set up. The kids are either really in a classroom and we have them acting for us. This one is actually paid actors that we got. I go in and I tell them, here's what you're going to do. He's the focus of this one. You're going to do this behavior, you're going to do this behavior, you're going to do this behavior, and then we have an adult, usually a friend of mine, playing the role of the teacher. And when it says number 1, they're doing everything wrong. And so what you'll see in each one of them is they escalate quickly. This kid will escalate to leaving the room. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch number 1. We'll talk about strategies, and then I'm going to ask you, what would you like to see that teacher do different? And we're going to do it again. It'll say number 2, and then it'll be a beautiful world where everything happens exactly right on the second one. So let's start with this one. This is a kid who's clearly agitated when he walks into the room.
Caleb, cool it. Okay, everyone, I need you to get your papers out from yesterday. Those need to be on your desk. Caleb, if you do not have yours out, that will be a 0 for this assignment. Caleb, I am not going to play these games with you today. Pick up the paper or go to the office. Pick it up. Caleb, I don't know what your problem is, but you will not be disruptive in my class. Do you understand what I'm saying?
What y'all looking at?
That's it. To the office. Out.
Okay, so typical kid being typically disruptive. Teacher didn't really handle it as well as I think we'd liked for her to. These are things to think about. Prevention first. Teach kids how you want them to behave, model how you want them to behave, encourage them, and reinforce them for doing the things they're supposed to do. When a kid is disruptive, think about function. And that means, why would they do this? If they're doing this to get lots of attention, that's different than they're doing this because they want you to tell them to leave the room. And so I would handle it differently. If they want me to tell them to leave the room, I'm going to try to figure out a different way to do it. If they super want attention, I'm going to try to give them way less attention when they do this. But I need to think about that ahead of time. Provide reminders, and that's going to be the same with all of these. Reminders are so effective and so free. We can use them all the time. It doesn't cost us anything. Now, once you've got a kid that starts being disruptive, recognize agitation early. Find that and don't poke the bear. So here's this kid. He comes in and he throws himself in this chair. We would say he's agitated right now. And she yells across the room, "Hey, cool it!" If I were asking you to bet on whether this kid was going to go up, stay even, or go down when she yells across the room at him, yeah, it's not a good bet. It's not a high probability. What we want to have is communication in a neutral manner. Like, I am not going to jump into your escalation with you. That's a bad idea. I'm going to give it to you really straight and really clear. This will also be something you're going to see on all of these. Start with, remember, we're in agitation. Start with one direction. Could you please, so when that happens, there should have been a very clear communication with him that was quiet and neutral. Private would be better than not private. Could you please show me doing this? And move. That's it. Get out of there. The expectation for the student should be, if you have to say something about it, as not an ultimatum. An ultimatum is, do this or else. A choice is, right now you need to be doing these things. If you choose not to, these bad things will happen and you don't need those. So, it's up to you. It's the ultimatum part is still kind of there, but it's how you present it. I'm presenting it as, you can make a choice. You can do this way and get these things, or go this way and get these things. It seems to me you'd be better off going this way, but I'm offering it out there for you. This is for you. Again, I think privacy is good. So let's go on to number 2. What would you like to see this teacher do differently?
Are you asking for a response?
Yes.
Okay. I would want her not to yell across the room. I would want to walk up to him maybe.
Okay, 1, don't immediately yell across the room. Go over to him to have your conversation. Good. What else?
If you can see that he's agitated, try just a simple private. Is there anything that's bothering you that you'd like to
Right.
talk about?
Exactly. Make it about, I'm doing this over and over. Make it about him, not you. What she did on the first one, and she was scripted to do this, is she kept saying, "I'm not going to let you bother my classroom. I'm not going to," she just kept, it's all about me. She never said, "Are you okay? What's up?" We want to bring it back to the student. Good. What else? Anything else you can think you'd like to see her do different?
If you could redirect him to a place other than his chair or his desk, sometimes like you can ask, like you said before, could you go shut the door for me? Or
Right. Maybe give them a redirection to do something that's not sit down and work kind of a thing. The other thing that I, again, was scripted is I asked the teacher, who was a friend of mine, peck at him. Just no matter what he's doing, just keep pecking. "What are you doing now? How come you're not? You better not do that wrong. Hey," just like, give him one request and back off, hit and run again. It's not like you don't just keep staring at him. If you're going to stare at him looking for one little thing wrong, you're going to keep finding it and you're just going to be pecking at him all the time and it's going to escalate it. So let me tell you this about all the number 2 versions. I wrote them so they have beautiful, happy endings. I am not suggesting that if you do the things the teacher does here, that would work. All I'm saying is it's a better probability. Also, I don't really necessarily think what the teacher does on number 2 is perfect. I think she could use a slightly different tone. I think she could have said things a little differently, but it's clearly better than the first one.
Okay, everybody, I need you to get out your papers that we were working on yesterday and start on problem number 7. Problem number 7. Caleb, look, you almost were finished with this yesterday. I want you to start here on number 7. You know how to do these problems. It's just like number 6 from yesterday. So can you go ahead and get started? I need you to make a good choice.
Man, I'm not in the mood today.
I can see that you're not in the mood, Caleb, but I really need you to get this assignment finished, okay? Make a good choice. You need to pass this class.
Man, you know Mr. Carson gave me detention for nothing?
I can see that you're upset and with Mr. Carson, and you and I can talk about that detention later, okay? But right now, it's important to focus on math and get this problem done. Keisha, nice job. Great choice, Caleb. Nice job.
So, again, I think you can't script people to be genuine. That's what was missing to me, is a little bit of the genuineness in her voice. She just said, I need you to do this, rather than this is good for you. Way better than the previous one. Let's think about how we would get him back. So I'm going to go back to my hit and run again. So I think of this a lot like if we're in recovery. He's got his escalation was he threw the paper, whatever he did. He's back. Okay, he's back with us. It's recovery. I'm going to go over and say, I know you were having a problem with Mr. Carson. I actually have some ideas. Tell you what, we're all getting going. We're going to do problem 6 and 7, but if you just get your paper out, I got to move, but I'll come back and I'll give you an idea on that, okay? Thanks. I'm going to move. I'm going to do whatever I'm doing and keep running the class like I normally would, and keep come by here. And, I had a teacher like this once, and I found that if I did this and this, that worked. So that's one of the strategies. I think we could talk about a lot more. Tell you what, why don't you get going on number 1, just work on that, and I'll come back around. And I'm just going to keep circling back, and I want eventually for her to be back in doing what everybody else is doing. But if I come in and say, you're now 1 problem behind, so you'd better get going, we know she's going right back up again, because she's in a de-escalation right now, and I'm thinking I can get her into recovery where we can get her back. But we have to get her back before we can start talking about those other things. Let's go to, what's next? Provocative behavior. So, provocative behavior was defined by the teachers we talked to as racial slurs, sexist comments, dress code, egregious dress code violations, the kid with the pot leaf on his shirt, yada, yada. And all of these things, they said, these aren't things kids forget and do. They do them wanting us to hear or see it because they love the attention. That's why we call it provocative. So provocative behavior is meant to provoke you. And when it does provoke you, it has worked. So we have to yawn in the face of provocation. We're going to follow through with the consequence for whatever it was, but you cannot offend me. I just won't be offended by a child's words or thing. We will talk about why that's inappropriate, and there will be a consequence, but you're not going to get me. So I'm playing the role of the teacher on this one, and this kid comes in wearing a really crude, rude message on his t-shirt. I find it personally offensive and get upset, and I escalate more than the student does here. So take a look. Guys, come on in, take a seat. Nope, dress code violation, not coming in with that shirt on.
But my mom gave it to me.
I don't care who got it for you, it's inappropriate, you're not wearing it here.
Well, if my mom says it's okay to wear, then it's none of your business.
It's my business because it's inappropriate. Out.
What's your problem?
You need to leave until you get that shirt fixed because it's against the dress code. You punk trying to wear that into my classroom. I won't have this. So what's the outcome here? Kid's missing class. Is there a way that I could have figured out for him to fix this situation rather than missing class? When we think provocative behaviors, it starts with prevention, which is teaching. Again, teach, model, engage, encourage, provide feedback about why these things. So on the day that he shows up with that shirt, I shouldn't have to tell him why it's inappropriate, because we should have already had this discussion. And I can say, remember we had the discussion and we said, even though we might not all feel the same way at school, these kinds of things are inappropriate, and that's why your shirt is like that. Instead, I yelled at him in front of all the other kids and made a big deal about the shirt. If he was trying to provoke everybody with that shirt, man, I gave it to him. I let him have exactly what he wanted, tons of attention for wearing this shirt. So when we think about it, we want to teach that consequence. If you do that kind of a thing, here's the consequence. Yeah, that's what it is. So I hope that doesn't happen. If it does, I'll try to help you figure out a way to fix it. Not everything can be fixed, as we'll talk about in a second. So first of all, never let provocative behavior be a problem for you. It's a problem for them. As you know, we don't use that word, and that is going to be a problem for you. You can be suspended for that word. So how can we fix this? And I say we, but it's going to be you. I'm willing to do some things to help you fix it, but I'm not fixing it for you. You've got to fix it. But offer that as a choice. And again, it's not an ultimatum. Either you do this or you're going to be suspended. I can see some choices here for you. If you could do this, we could get along this way. But it's going to have to come back to you doing something. Important. I'm not going to argue with you about it. I'm not shocked. I'm not offended. I don't care how offensive it was. I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of showing that I'm offended. It's purely this was the rule. Here's what you did. That's why it's a problem. That's it. It isn't about me. If the kid refuses, then okay, you've chosen a consequence. I'm not giving you a consequence. You've chosen it. And that's where it's going to go. I'm sorry you made that choice. I'm going back to teaching. I'm going to go back and do what I'm doing. I'm not going to let this be a problem anymore. Now, some things, again, are easier to fix. Dress code thing, we can give you something different to wear. We really like using restorative practices for racial slurs and sexist comments and those kinds of things because there isn't really a fix. Just apologizing might be enough, depends on how bad it was, but sometimes it needs more than an apology. And again, that's an option. We can meet after class and you can explain why you thought about doing that, and other people can explain what that means to them and why it's bothersome, and we can see if you can understand that. Or you can just refuse to do any of it, in which case this would be the consequence, and that's up to you. But we can't make you do anything. That's not possible. You have to decide what's best for you. So, here's number 2, with me being much nicer. Have a seat. Thank you. Hey, Stephen, hang on there a second. I want to talk to you. Come on in, guys. Have a seat. You know what to do. Come on in. Welcome. Thanks, guys. Come on in. Hey, that shirt is really pretty inappropriate. I don't think you're going to make it through the day. You're going to end up getting in trouble if you wear that shirt.
My mom got it for me. So.
That's even more of a reason why you wouldn't want to lose that shirt, right? Because if you wear it through the day, you are going to get in trouble. See, the thing is, because it's so inappropriate to get in dress code, if I were to have to see you wearing it out here, I'm going to have to go tell the principal. I don't think it's that big a deal. I don't want you to get in trouble for it, but it's up to you. So I'll tell you what we could do. You could come in here. I've got another shirt I could have you wear, or I can give you a pass to go to PE to get another shirt. But you're going to have to make a choice of how to fix this.
I'll just take your shirt.
I think that's a good choice for you. Come on in. I'll get it for you. So I'm sorry that It's just that video that the audio is too low on. So if I go turn it up, the next one's going to blast. So the idea is he came in. One, I called him aside. Let everybody else come in, so I'm not doing this in front of everybody, and then had a private conversation. And I said, that shirt's inappropriate because, as you know, these are the rules we had for that. And he says, my mom got it for him. And I said, well, that's a good reason to fix it because you don't want to lose this shirt, right? So it's up to you, but here are some choices. You could put a shirt on over that. You could turn it inside out. I've got another shirt I give you, but it's up to you. And I said in the video, and I said this to kids before, personally, it's not that I care. It's that this is the rule of the school. So if you don't fix it, I will have to go tell the principal. And it's not because I think it's a great big deal. It's because that's the rule. So I'm not going, I'm going to go tell the principal. I'm telling you, it's just the rule. It's not provocative to me. You haven't provoked me, but there's a consequence. I'm telling you what the consequence is, and you can fix it or not. Seems to me make more sense to fix it, but up to you. And they do have to make that decision. All right, we'll save the best ones for the last. Non-compliance and disrespect. Non-compliance is the one that teachers say they see the most. So I wrote this based upon a certain kind of kid that I remember. This is what this kind of kid did in my classroom. I would say, everyone, go to your seat, get out a book and a paper, we're going to do this thing. And some kid would say, I can't. Why can't you? I don't have a book. Oh, well, I'll see if I can find you one. Yeah, but I also don't have a pencil. Well, have a seat. I know, but I also don't have paper. Well, I think we could find those things. Yeah, but I need to use the restroom. And this just goes, it's this wild goose chase. I've got a million reasons why I can't do this today. And as I keep saying, oh, well, I could help you like this. No, that won't help because I also need to go down to the office and talk to the nurse. Yeah, well, how about it? Yeah, I appreciate that, but I'm also, so there's just no way I can do this. And they're leading us on a wild goose chase. They've got a million reasons why they can't do what we're doing today. And so it just goes on until usually the teacher gets mad and it goes nowhere. So,
Class?
Yes.
Class?
Yes, yes.
All right, it's time to start our letters. You have 20 minutes. I'm going to start the timer now. Please begin. Sydney, get out your paper and get started.
I don't understand.
We've discussed it. You know the assignment. Get started.
I don't have a paper.
I gave everyone a paper. You do have a paper. Get it out and get started.
I don't have a pencil.
You have a pencil in your desk. Get it out and get started.
I'm not using this.
You are going to use it or you're going to get a 0.
I'll go to my locker then.
No, sit down and use the pencil and the paper that I gave you and get started.
Discuss how the teacher handled the situation.
So in the kids' view, this teacher's just pecking at me like, no, you're not going to do it that way. No, you're not going to do that. You're not gonna do that. But I think in our view, the student has way too many reasons why she can't do what we're supposed to be doing. But I would say the student was in charge here. The student was the one that directed how the teacher responded over and over, and that's where we have to chop it off. So let's go back to our prevention. It's always this: teach, model, engage, encourage, provide feedback, and give reminders. So here we are getting ready to do this part in class where everybody does this. You give a reminder. What you're all going to need is that paper. We're going to be doing this in 2 minutes, so have that paper ready. If you don't have it, tell me now. You're all going to need a pencil. Remind everybody of what we need before we get there. And regularly say thank you to those who are complying. So, here's this kid. Okay, here's what we need. Have a seat, get your book, get your pencil, get a paper. We're all going to do this. Yeah, I can't do that because, and we start this thing. Okay, tell you what. Why don't you have a seat and I'll help you with the book. And here's what the kid's going to say. Well, why would I go have a seat if I don't have a paper, or I go to the bathroom and I got to do all these things? And I told you, I will help you with those things once you have a seat. So you give them a direction to follow before you'll do the next one. We're turning this around. I'm in charge now. You don't do something and I respond, do something and you respond. So when I see you sitting down, we'll talk about the book. Well, I still don't have a paper or a pencil. I know, and I will help you with all that once you sit down. Kid sits down, I get a book. And I say, okay, here's your book. Open it to page 307. I don't have a paper or a pencil. I know. And when I see that book open to 307, I will help you with that. So then, kid's like, opens it, it's at 307. Hey, thanks for opening your book to 307. Here's a paper and a pencil. Why don't you get your name written on there? I need to go to the bathroom. Well, once I see that you've gotten your name on there and the first 3 problems, then we can talk about you going to the bathroom. Well, why should I have to do it? Because that's what we do. You've got to follow a direction in order to get the next thing. Some of these things we're not going to do. I need to go to the nurse. We're not doing that one. You can do that between classes. But every time you want something from me, you got to do something to get it. And we just turn this around. You're still going to have all the options to do all these same things. But here's the difference in the endings. When we do it the other way, at the end, I go, you've got nothing done today. She goes, I know it's your fault because I told you I didn't have a book or a paper or a pencil and I need to go to the bathroom. On this one, if they don't do any of it, I say, no, I told you I was going to help you with those things and all you needed to do was sit. You chose not to. That was your choice. I gave you multiple options for getting this done, but you didn't follow the direction. So I want to give it to them always as, I'm willing to help you with every one of those things. But in order to get my help, you follow a direction. So, and the directions aren't big and hard, they're just little steps. But you'll respond to me. You don't get to lead me on the wild goose chase of all the problems you're having right now. They're on a list, and we'll address them one by one. And each time we address one, you'll have to do a little more of something before we'll address the next. So, here's the best we could do with showing that.
Class.
Yes, yes.
Time to get started on our letters. We've gone over the directions. Does anybody have any questions? No. All right, go ahead and get started. You have 20 minutes. Sydney, why are you not started?
I don't understand.
If you go ahead and get your paper out and go ahead and write your greeting, I'll come over and help you with the directions.
I don't have a pencil.
If you have a pencil on your desk, please get it out and get started.
I don't want to use this.
Okay, if you'll get a paper out, go ahead and get started. Start on your greeting. I'll go find you a better pencil. Does that work? Sounds good. Here you go. Did you have a question about the assignment? Okay, what do you not understand?
Well, I wasn't here for the morning, so...
If I gave you an example, would it help? A couple students said that they weren't a fan of Thanksgiving.
Let's look at another one. This one is on a bus. We've created modules for training bus drivers how to deal with behaviors, and this one really has nothing to do with the bus except that it happens to be on a bus. But there's a difference about this one. I want you to just watch it and then get your impressions.
Guys, you need to sit down so we can get the bus moving. We're not going while you're standing. Harper, that includes you. Sit down.
Whatever.
Harper, I'm not going to tell you again. I'm going to count to 3, and if you aren't seated, you're out of here. 1, 2, 3. Off. Let's go.
Forget it. I'm going home.
Not on my bus, you aren't.
What's up?
Harper needs to be escorted off.
All right, Harper. Let's go.
Seriously, this is ridiculous.
Let's go. I tried to script this like this before and it didn't work. This girl was a way better actress. I find her incredibly obnoxious and annoying. And so I'll just be honest. There have been times in my career when a kid has done something, and I have to admit I enjoyed watching them get punished for it. Like, she is so obnoxious. Whatever, when you have your directions, like, she deserves to get kicked off the bus. And then I think, all right, I'm the adult in this situation. I forgot that for a second. She's not doing well in school. She doesn't show up a lot. When she gets kicked off the bus, she won't come for school for the whole week when she's kicked off. And then I start thinking, yeah, right. Is there a better way to do this? And I have to give her every opportunity to do it right. I don't think we gave her every opportunity to do it right. Of course, she was incredibly obnoxious, but is there a choice she could have been given that was more clear as to why you need to make this choice and what will happen if you don't? In the first version, she says, I'm going to count to 3, which in the history of behavior has never worked. So that's just a ridiculous way to go with it. It's a challenge. And a kid like Harper. So let's look at just a very slight variation.
Okay, guys, let's have a seat so we can get started. I can't move the bus while we're standing because it's a safety issue, so sit down so we can get home, please. Come on, Harper, have a seat, please.
Hang on, I'm talking.
Can you have a seat there and turn around and finish your conversation, or even hop in the seat behind you and go ahead and finish your conversation, because I can't move the bus while you're standing. I'm not allowed.
Fine.
Thanks, Harper.
I always feel like when this bus driver turns around right here, she's like, bitch. And that's okay. She didn't say it out loud. The kid's still obnoxious. But I think this driver can go home tonight and say, I did what a professional would do. She annoyed me, and yet I gave her an opportunity to make it right. She did. I can throw darts at her tonight on the picture on my wall, but when we're at school, I have to give every kid this opportunity to do the right thing. And we're all human beings, and kids can get under our skin. And I think it's always, I find with myself, I have to keep checking my temperature. And I've just learned that when a kid says something to me that's snarky, that I have to count 3. And I even beat with my foot. 1, 2, 3, to make sure that I don't just come back quick with something snarkier. Because what I know is that I am slightly more witty than a 15-year-old delinquent, which means every time they say something ridiculous to me, I'll say something back, and all it's going to make them do is say something even more ridiculous back to me, and this is never going to be something that ends well, for them anyway, but maybe for neither of us. So I think that's the point I wanted to make there before we go on to our last one, which is disrespect. This one starts out as disruption or non-compliance or off task, but ends up with disrespect to teacher. This is not a video that I made. It's one that my friend Jeff Colvin made. I love the teacher in this one. He is the one who escalates here when this kid does this.
Quit it.
Some of you students are unbelievably rude. I don't know why I waste my time with you. Stupid butthead. What did you say?
Nothing.
So what'd you say?
I didn't say anything.
This one, the reason I use this one is, again, this teacher, that this whole idea that I will physically intimidate you is so wrong. You know, this coming over and like this. One, this is the message we're trying not to teach to all the kids, that might makes right, and if you're big, you can intimidate people. And now here we are doing it. Second, it's a bluff. You aren't going to beat him up, so why are you pretending like this is the way this is going to go? It doesn't work for us in any way. When kids are disrespectful, we want to correct it, but this is a lot like provocation. Can't let them see you sweat. They say something horrible about me, I'm going to stop and say, we're going to need to talk about that, but you don't get to control when we do that. I'm teaching right now. I'm not going to stop the class and you and I talk about this during class. I'm going to say, why don't we talk right after class about that? And here we go. And I keep it right and going back to, and if another thing is said, I'm going to say, I'll walk over there while I'm talking to class and say, yes, you and I can talk about this later. But I'm not going to let you decide when and how. So I'm going to find the time when we do this, when it's just you and me and it's not in front of everybody. Because why are kids disrespectful like that? Generally, they either want attention from the rest of the class, which this definitely gets, or they want attention from you, or both. I'm not going to play. I'm not going to let you control when and where and how the attention comes for you for doing something inappropriate. So what I will do when this happens is I'll just point to it and say, we can talk later. I've done this. Once you see me after class, I want to talk to you about that. And a kid goes, what? I don't think that was disrespectful. And I go, well, that's a good reason for us to have a conversation. And then I just go right back to talking. But I just take the wind out of those sails. If I say, oh my God, I can't believe you would say that. What are you doing? How dare you? It's reinforcing. And I remember this clearly from my junior high days. So this is a real story. So we had, like in 7th grade, music would play in the hallway for 4 minutes, and you could be out in the hallway while that music played. And teachers and students would change classrooms. So I did not do this, but I watched it being done. So these kids would run into the classroom really fast, pull up the movie screen, write F.U., Mr. or Mrs. whoever, pull down the movie screen and run out. And of course, I knew it had been done, and so this was really interesting to watch. So then when the music's stopping, you wander in the classroom like you just got there and you have a seat, and you're just waiting for the teacher to pull that movie screen up. And I can remember this so clearly as a 12, 13-year-old. The teachers that pulled it up and was like, this is ridiculous, I can't believe. And I remember this feeling like, this is awesome. We are controlling this teacher. It's like we're puppeteers. We can make this teacher get so mad. There's this power that kids have because they can make you dance. And I can remember the feeling that when a teacher would pull it up and just erase it and keep talking, it was like, well, that was hardly worth the effort. That was boring. Don't do that with her. That doesn't work. And I think that a lot when I teach now and I'm with kids that are trying to get my goat. It's just like, you can't, and I'm not going to let you. I'm an adult. I am not going to lose my emotions because a kid called me a name. We're going to talk about it, and there will be a consequence, but it'll be on my terms, not yours. We'll do this after class. And the reason I use this video is because the juxtaposition of the teacher in that first one and now when he has ice water in his veins is perfect.
Hey, quit it.
I do appreciate the people that are listening. John, I need to see you after I'm done with reading this section. Now, let's get back to what we're reading.
Every kid in that class knows exactly who's in charge of the class, and that you aren't going to be able to do something to get him to follow you instead of what we're doing. Because if I really hate this class, I would love to see someone say something in there because he's going to run over there and yell and we're not having to do this class anymore. So I won't let a kid get me going. And again, that means sometimes I have to count 3 because I don't want to fall into that trap. So here are some big ideas. 1, take advantage of the calm phase and teach all the things you want kids to know so that when something happens, instead of teaching, you can go, remember, we've talked about this. But if you have to try to teach it after something's gone wrong, it isn't going to work very well. Take advantage to pre-teach. 2nd, watch for the trigger and the agitation and distract and redirect as much as you can. Try to break the chain before it gets big, because once it gets big, you're not going to break it. You just got to play the safety game, which means minimize that peak. Keep it safe, keep away, don't give tons of attention to it. Minimize that peak and focus on safety. Avoid confrontation once they stopped their escalation. Let them come down before we start our next thing. Once they get all the way down, we bring them back in slowly with the recovery phase. We don't talk about consequences until we get back to calm again. Those are the basic ideas. Are there any questions about the things we've discussed today? All right, well, thank you all for being here.